What's up guys, Mook review time. Today we're taking a look at the entry grade Strike Gundam 10 kinds of modeling technique for all Gunpla modelers book. Now, if you guys may remember, a couple of years back I did look at the previous entry in this kind of book series for the RX-782 Gundam. So there was a book exactly like this, all about the entry grade RX-782. And the really cool thing about this is that it goes through 10 different sample builds, kind of ranging in difficulties. So like a really basic build first to kind of show here's like some simple things that you can do to make the kit look better, all the way up to like a fully customized with like a lot of like kit bashing and stuff going on with it version to make it look really, really cool based off of the entry grade Strike Gundam. So if you guys are fans of the Strike Gundam or just fans of Gunpla modeling in general, let's check it out here for today's video. Let's get into it. Right, so right off the bat, you can see a couple of the sample builds right here. It looks like probably one of the more basic ones in the front, and then maybe progressively more of the kind of more advanced builds that we're gonna see in here, as I said there in the background. Underneath the dust jacket, it is just monochrome there like that. I did like the quote here on the front, which is kind of funny. Kono isatsu de Gunpla ga motto tanoshiki naru, which means with this one book, Gunpla will be more fun. So this one book is all you need to enjoy Gunpla more. So list price here for this one, $14.50, so 1,450 yen for the MSRP right down there, which is like less than $15. Very nice for that. You can see a couple other images there that we're going to see from the inside of the book. Also, I'll just point this out here while we're here. It does include a waterslide decal sheet for the Strike Gundam. I guess not necessarily the entry grade Strike Gundam. You could certainly use that on like the HG or whatever else you want, but it has a lot of cool, particularly unique to the Strike Gundam markings on there, which is pretty awesome, which I think we'll see probably in some of the builds inside here. So right off the bat, we've got our contents right here. No photos for that, but an entry grade Strike Gundam, just kind of primer here to start us off, as in like introduction to the entry grade Strike Gundam, which I kind of would have expected to be like even more in depth, but actually it's pretty simple. Just basically this one page, just kind of an introduction of the Strike Gundam entry grade kit, and then over here just about the Strike Gundam generally, and there's some different kind of variants and things over here shown, which is kind of cool. And then we're right into step one. And as I said, obviously it's going to be starting off with some of the most basic kind of steps. So we're going to be using just some spray can paint, some Gundam markers, some Panaline markers, looks like just some 100 yen store masking tape, basically decorative tape, I guess actually is what they're using there for that. So it's like dollar store tape here basically. And I guess this is maybe the build that we're going to be using. Oh, so we're making a deactive version of the Strike Gundam. So that's why we're only using these two colors, two different colors of gray, like a light medium gray and a dark gray here for the colors for us. So, okay, interesting. So painting on the runners, which as you guys know, not necessarily a big advocate for, but you know, does have its uses, I suppose. And this is actually illustrative of why I don't recommend that, because as you can see, like for the feet parts here, the parts are sprayed on the runner, and then after you cut the parts out, you have these little parts where then you're going to have to remove the gates a little bit more, kind of clean up the nub marks a bit more, and that's going to mean that you're then going to have to touch up the paint further. So then you have to spray some of your spray can paint into a cup or something and then touch it up. In this case, not even using a brush, just using a little toothpick. So I mean, yeah, fairly straightforward kind of process, but you know, why not just cut the parts out and do the nub cleanup ahead of time and then just spray the parts, you know, just on your alligator clips. I think, you know, probably just as easy, to be honest. But doing some panel lining here with just a Real Touch marker, it looks like there, for just some simple and easy panel lining, using some of that tape, it looks like. Yeah, I think some of that decorative tape here for like the cameras on it, which is kind of interesting. So maybe not masking tape, but that's more like a kind of thin, like just colored tape, essentially. Anyway, but it does look pretty cool. It doesn't like have that metallic sort of shine to it like a foil sticker or something would normally. But that does look pretty cool. Using a fine tipped marker there for, again, just painting in some of the finer, smaller details here around on the kit. And there's your finished results. So yeah, really easy. Obviously the deactive mode, it's a pretty easy color scheme to paint. It's just like 2, maybe 3 tones of gray essentially that you need for that, and a couple little colors like on the head here showing the original kit versus the painted build. So pretty cool. I mean, it looks pretty nice for just the most basic of basic steps there for that. Obviously nothing too fancy, but you get a pretty nice result there from that. Now we're getting into step 2. We're already into airbrushing. So, I mean, we are progressing like relatively quickly, I guess. Normally in these type of books, airbrushing would be something that would come in probably like the 3rd or 4th build, something around there, I guess. We're going to be airbrushing and also using some masking tape. We're doing some masking on some of these parts, it looks like maybe. Also, it looks like the bottom of the feet in where there's a hollow gap in there was filled in with some polyester putty. And then sanded down smooth, and then after sanding it down, if there's still any little bit of imperfections, you can add just some more basic type putty to that, just to get it nice and smooth there for the bottom of the feet. So we didn't add any more detail, but he just filled in the hollow space there on the bottom of the feet. Mixing up some paints here for that, about kind of the basics of airbrushing, making sure your paint is the right consistency, not too thin, not too thick, testing it out first, using a dust brush, which are kind of expensive really, but it can be helpful surely, just to make sure that you're not having any dust that's going to be trapped and like messing up your paint when you're painting. So just brush the part off before painting, spray your paint on first, and it looks like, yeah, this is kind of a way that I know I paint, and I know a lot of people paint too when you're airbrushing, is you do it kind of in 2 stages. You do kind of like a misting, kind of a very light layer kind of all around the part, and then you go back over that with a more wet layer, which you can see kind of right here. And it looks like this is saying maybe here, if you get like some paint kind of pooling on there, to maybe adjust the sensitivity of your airbrush a little bit, so that you're being careful not to spray too much too quickly there on the parts. Spraying the white parts obviously going to be a bit more straightforward here, but a lot of people would even say, I think for me, if this is like a really beginner build and you're airbrushing, if you were to come to me and say, if the part is already white out of the box, do I really need to spray paint it in white? Again, I mean, that's up to you really, and it's just kind of a personal thing. But obviously, white, pure white is not super, like well defined. Obviously, there's a lot of different sort of shades and color temperatures of white. I mean, you could do like a very, very slightly off-white, so it still has the appearance of like looking white for all intents and purposes, but it is slightly different from what it would have been if you left it completely unpainted, sort of thing. So, I mean, you can certainly paint white to your exact specifications, how you might want. And so even on these shield parts here, so it looks like he used a white surfacer or a very light gray. What was the surfacer that he's using here? Yeah, it looks like he's using gray surfacer maybe. But yeah, even on the yellow parts, like for the shield, and these are some of the other different color parts, the red parts here, using that surfacer just to get a nice neutral tone to start off with, and then building up your color on top of that yellow. Notoriously kind of difficult to paint over gray, just because the gray just zaps all the rich yellow brightness out of the color. And so I would recommend you guys, if you're painting especially yellow, but also for red and orange colors, to use either white surfacer or pink surfacer if you can get it. And that's much better for painting these bright, warm colors there. For blue, gray surfacer is usually fine. Here's like kind of a great example right here. You can kind of see on this card, it's red over gray surfacer. On this card, it's red over white surfacer. And you can just see the color difference there between those. And the same thing up here for the yellows. The yellow over gray is so much more kind of ugly looking compared to over white. It's a nice, rich yellow color. So another kind of nice tip to have in mind, where yeah, it's less noticeable on blue and any kind of cooler and or darker colors. But anyway, so then there's going to be some masking involved too. It looks like here for painting some of the details in. And honestly, I mean, just depending on kind of what you want to do, what you're going for, you could certainly opt to just hand paint those details in. Just maybe what I would, again, if I was recommending for a really basic like beginner, I would maybe opt to recommend maybe just try hand painting in some of these like small little details. But certainly if you want to get the practice of masking, you can mask those. So painting the Grand Slam sword here as well, and some nice silver, kind of like chrome silver there for that. And then some top coat. Here's kind of illustrating how the top coat will also affect the color. So if you have a gloss coat, it will make the make your bright colors like kind of pop even more. Just a semi-gloss would be just sort of relatively neutral. A flat or matte finish will sort of, I don't want to say like desaturate, but sort of kind of tone down the colors slightly. They won't like be popping and quite as bright as they would be as if you use a gloss coat. So here you can see like on the finished result, after spraying the top coat and everything and cleaning up the airbrush a little bit, the finished results are looking very nice. So this would be like a very standard kind of build that you would see, probably the kind of build that you would see like for promotional images, what you would see like on the box art and something like that. Nothing really too custom about it, but it's really nice, clean paint job in what is essentially the original colors. You can see the original kit here. And this painted build, I mean, the colors are slightly different, but I mean, like not that much. A nice, like slight, subtle change to the blue though. I do like that. All right, point 3 here. Now we're getting into a little bit more kind of advanced physical cleanup and modification to the kit. For example, getting rid of mold lines on here. So like here on this part, you got some mold lines on there. So about just kind of sanding that using a sandpaper and sanding sponges. Also the antenna on there, you've got these safety flags on there. So just about how to cut and remove those. This is kind of using this standard technique of you cut the majority of it off, don't try to cut it off entirely with your nippers, because then you run a too high a risk of damaging the V-fin and cutting off more than what you meant to, more than what you should. So I usually cut about, like, of the safety flag, I try to snip off with the nippers about 50%, cut it about halfway through, and then the rest of that, whittle it down a little bit with a knife, but again, you have to be really careful with it. And then either, depending on how much you have left after that and how much you feel comfortable with it, using a file and or sanding stick to get it flat. Don't use sandpaper because it's too soft. This needs to be a kind of very flat and rigid, sharp shape. So you need to use something that's rigid. Sandpaper is going to make it rounded. And or a sanding sponge will do the same thing. So you need to use something that's hard. Glass vial also would work really well for that. Filling in some other hollow gaps like here. I think this is in the back of the neck joint. I probably wouldn't have bothered with that myself, but yeah, you can fill that in with a little bit of polyester putty there. You can see that's what's featured right up there. We already saw that for filling in the bottom of the feet, but here's another example of filling in some more gaps in like some other parts in the knee joint and the ankle joint, and then under the feet as well. The seam line for this part, which is for the backpack, I think, right? Let me see. Yeah, for the backpack. So that would be the backpack of the HG kit. So if you wanted to, obviously, if you guys are unfamiliar with the kit is compatible with the backpacks used by the HG kits, so you can use that. Drilling out the hole for the gun barrel, so with a small drill, another highly recommended and very easy to do technique. Making a little cap piece here for the hole in the backpack. If you didn't want to have the backpack on there, if you wanted to just plug that hole, just how to make just a kind of little plug piece to fill that in. Here's kind of interesting technique here for painting in the details in this kind of like vent in the back skirt. It should be black in the center with a little bit of red trim around on the inside of there. So he just masked it and painted the red, and then for the black square in the center, he's just actually using a little cut piece of flat black finish. So it's just like a sheet of sticker, essentially just a big massive black sticker, and you can just cut little squares to the exact size that you need and place that on there, rather than trying to paint that in one way. There's a bunch of different ways you could go about trying to paint it, but this way is certainly pretty simple and easy to do. So it looks like he's also using that black matte finish to fill in some of these details in just the other vent areas around the front skirts. I think this is at like the bottom of the chest there, I believe. So just to fill in anywhere there's like just a small, you need to look like a small little bit of black here in the backpack as well. This under the eyes, I think that's actually just hand painted in, probably it looks like. Some more about masking and painting some of these details here. For example, doing some panel lining using the Tamiya panel line accent color, cleaning that up with lighter fluid. Again, that's what I do as well. And you have your finished result. You did use some of the waterslide decals on here also, so waterslide decals. And yeah, this is before and after for the skirt. He painted in the underside of the skirts in black, or it's got to be pretty dark. It's very black. I usually go for just like a really dark gray, like German gray or something, because you usually don't need to go quite as dark as using black, because it makes for a pretty stark contrast. Gray, like a really dark gray, is maybe not so stark, but certainly a good technique to be in the practice of regardless, however, whatever color you end up choosing. Painting like the inside of the shoulder armor, the underside of the skirts, areas like that, that's really not going to be seen, but you might catch a little glimpse of it here and there, so you might as well just kind of fill that in some kind of dark background color, essentially, right? So here's some nice before and after images there, and it's certainly a very nice looking build. Again, another one that you would the typical kind of build you would see for like a sample used for box art or for a magazine publication, something like this. Now we're getting into our first kind of more noticeably customized kind of custom build here with a painted version of the Strike Rouge. Now this one I think essentially is going to be covering a lot of the same steps that we just saw in the previous build. It's just using a different color now rather than the original Strike colors. It's painting it in the Rouge colors with just different shades of pink. So we're going to see some different colors here for this, but let's see if there's anything else kind of too noteworthy when it comes to the colors of it. Essentially just mixing up some different colors of pink here, more just spraying there for that. And yeah, I don't think we're going to see really too much else. Yeah, not really. So it's just kind of a custom color scheme. That's kind of the gist of this stage here, stage 4. So if you do just, if you wanted to do just kind of a basic, simple, clean, nice paint job, but you didn't want to do it in the original colors, here's an example of you can do custom colors like the Strike Rouge. I don't think we have a decal included here for the Strike Rouge, do we? Yeah, we do. Actually, yeah, there is. So that's cool. Here's the decal. This little decal that you can see here there for the shoulder is included on the decal sheet. Very nice. Step 5 here. Now we're going to get into, let's see, maybe some custom modification, scribing, cutting, and plot plate. So let's see what they're making on this. Here we have the before and after. Look at that. And essentially it just looks like a lot of the existing lines are like accentuated. But again, we see some filling in some gaps here with like some plot plate and putty used to fill in some of the gaps. Once again, he made like a custom different, rather than just like a little square like kind of hatch cover piece to fill the hole in the back, he made a kind of a little bit more kind of interesting looking shape there for that. So it's using plot plate. Also here for inside the vents of the back skirt. In the previous build, we saw how you could go about using like tape for that. In this case, he scratch built a little piece, basically a little square piece of plot plate, and like scribed it with lines across it to make it look like a vent, and then it fits into there and looks like a nicer looking vent. Some pieces in here, it looks like for underside the skirt, as far as I can tell, it looks like that's filled in with putty and then scribed on the putty, or that might be pieces of plot plate, but it looks like that's just scribed directly into the putty maybe. Scratch built some pieces here to fill in some of the details inside the shoulder there, for example, which that looks really cool. Made a little like cap piece to go in the hole on the back side of the arm as well, so it's not just a kind of empty hard point, but actually has like a little bit of detail in there. That also looks really nice. In here around in the wrist joint, made a little just plot plate piece to fit in there. So this is all just kind of like details that are not like immediately obvious right there on the surface. So you can see here the difference between having just that empty hole in the elbow and then if that's filled in. And like stuff like this detail of the wrist, like in like probably 9 out of 10 shots, like just photographs of the finished build, depending on whatever pose, you're not ever gonna really see this. But in certain shots where you can see like inside the wrist joint, you can see there's actually a little bit of detail in there rather than just being like an empty space. So this is a really nice build. This is like a really nice step for beginner customization, because like rather than like jumping immediately into like very obvious exterior customization like scribing or adding plot plate to the armor or something to add more detail, it's adding detail into the sections that are not immediately noticeable. So a very nice way to start off with like customization in like the finer details, like getting the finesse of adding details into some of these littler areas. And then obviously once you kind of master that, then you can kind of take that to the outside of the build onto the surface as well, which I imagine probably what we'll be seeing maybe in this next step here. Yes, in step 6. So now we're getting into some scribing on the exterior, also like scribing and chiseling to add more surface detail onto the armor now. So we're going to be using a file to, like, for example, here on the side of the torso, just get it all nice and flat, and then using a knife and chisel combination here to add a kind of beveled detail like edge there onto the edge of the torso. For example, adding some detail around the edges here of, this is to the edge of the skirt armor. So this is the edge of the skirt armor and like the edges of a lot of parts from Bandai kits, and this is made just so they're kind of more kid-friendly, right? That you don't have a lot of sharp edges on things, but you can make it sharp by you just take a little like strip of plot plate, glue it onto the edge, and then file it down, and then you can file it to like as sharp as you want it. Now, ultimately at the end, of this like plot plate that you glued on there, probably about like 80 to 90% of that you're going to end up like cutting and or filing away, and there's really only going to be a tiny little bit of it left, but it's enough to give you that nice sharp edge around your parts. So that's really nice. Here for the back skirt armor, he cut and separated these parts so that you don't have that gap in between where it's a gap, but there's a piece of plastic inside of there. He wanted to cut it so that it actually looks like, and it actually is, separate pieces rather than just like kind of looking like separate pieces, sort of. So that's nice. Adding a little bit of height around the backside of the thigh armor there. It looks like cutting and separating this part of armor here. So not only adding details by scribing, but also cutting the pieces apart a little bit here, just to make everything look more realistic, as these would naturally be separate parts. So if you cut it to actually make it separate parts, then it just looks even more so how you want it to look. Adding plot plate, looks like adding thin pieces of plot plate and then scribing onto that here for details even on that would be the elbow joint, it looks like. On the shoulder, making a little vent detail here for the shoulder here, adding some details onto the top of the shoulder, the underside of the skirt armor. Again, filling in all these gaps and things with putty here. And our finished result. This would be from the HG kit, I believe, right? That backpack part. And we didn't really see too much about that. But the Strike Gundam itself here, you can see before and after comparison. And I mean, it just looks so much more detailed. It looks like a master grade kit, even though it's the entry grade, which is very cool. And again, really nice use of the decals and everything on that also. Step 7 out of 10, just as a reminder to you guys, so that's how much we have left here. This one looks like it's going to be even more in the way of refining details, adding details, not only through scribing, but also through plot plate here. So like in this section of the backpack and the wings where there's like this vent, adding pieces of plot plate in there to look like some additional vent details there. So here's the kind of before and after. It looks like taking a look at adding and also refining some of the details that exist here on the wings to make them look more detailed, and that looks really cool. Inside the vents, as I said, this is a different vent section, but also just refining the details in the vents. This is pretty cool, using some photo etch parts here as well, some photo etch kind of vent details, and then also for the Gatling shield, refining some of the details on that, drilling out and filing out the holes on like the barrel part of the Gatling gun. And then that looks like that's just plot plates. He made just tubes or plastic rods, essentially, basically, to make new barrel parts for the Gatling gun. I would imagine the original part was like not separate barrels, but just like two pieces sandwiched together. And again, they look like I don't know, however many it would be, 6 barrels or whatever. But he actually made it as 6 separate pieces, so that it looks so much more realistic. And yeah, really nice finished result on this. The decals and the details, it's a bit like spotty for me. It looks like he's like all like freckled, if that makes sense. I don't know, there's like dot detail kind of all over the place with it. I'm not really quite into that, but the color scheme on it, having like a little bit more kind of warmer color scheme, and then obviously like the Gatling shield looks awesome on here, and the IWSP backpack on that, very cool. So that's a really nice build. Got a few more photos here of this on the next page, and yeah, really cool backpack on that. Again, it looks like a master grade, but in 1/44 scale. All right, now obviously a much more highly customized build here, making a Akatsuki out of the entry grade here, combination with the HG Akatsuki kit, I would imagine. So some kit bashing here between some of these parts, kit bashing some of like the antenna details from the original kit. And it looks like probably, I think the original kit, the HG kit, is maybe coated. So he stripped the coating, and that's why those parts look black. I would imagine that's probably because the coating has been stripped off of there, and that's what the plastic under the gold is, just black plastic. So kind of just modifying these parts onto the head, gluing them onto there. Also additional parts or changing some of the design on the chest as well. The original Akatsuki HG kit, the parts for the chest kind of had to be like kind of cut out and then sort of adapted onto the chest of the entry grade Strike Gundam here. You can get kind of an idea of how you can do some kit bashing here, where if the one Gundam is based on another Gundam, that usually makes it a little bit easier to kit bash those parts onto there, because that's already kind of design-wise, they already are kind of very similar at the base. You just kind of have some different parts. So like, for example, like the chest, it's the basic shape of the chest is generally the same, You just have that center section is kind of different, so that's really kind of, you just need to take that center section from the one kit and just make it fit onto the other kit. Compared to something where you have to completely scratch build large portions of it, this is easier, but obviously still a lot of work just to get everything to fit as it's supposed to. Additional plot plate needed to modify to the waist section and skirting armor here onto the shoulders there. Obviously, again, just making the shoulder parts from the HG Akatsuki fit onto the Strike Gundam here, and having to modify everything just kind of to fit using plot plate, and obviously a lot of cutting and gluing everything. And there's a stage in here showing about how that gold was stripped off of here, and this is a really important step that is good to see in here. I'm glad to see it. Where they're testing it on a small piece of the runner, and that's what is really important. Anytime you guys get a plated kit and you think you may want to repaint it later, save either the entire runner or cut off some pieces of the runner just to test it. If you have like a particular liquid that you know you've used it before and it works well for stripping the coating on there, you know, that's fine. If you're not sure, or especially if it's your first time ever trying it, and try it just with a little sample piece of the runner, just to make sure that the liquid that you're using is working well to strip the gold that you're, or whatever color, strip whatever coating you're trying to strip and is not damaging your plastic at all. That's good to test it first. But then once it works, then obviously you can do it with the full kit. And here you can see, this is really nice to see here, the completed build, but completely unpainted. So you can see all the black that you're seeing in there is all parts from the Akatsuki kit. All the kind of tannish, yellowish color is all like some plot plate. I think that's all used for that. And so you can kind of see everything that's different from the original kit very clearly there. And for the painting, he's doing a really nice polishing finish on that, which with, it's not mentioning here, but I would imagine it's probably like 2000 grit or something, sanding sponge, just to get a really nice smooth finish, because you need that for a really nice glossy metallic finish. Using a gloss black first, then silver over the top of that, and then clear yellow over the top of that for making his gold. And what a result. Really, really nice. Is that one color or multi? It looks like there's a few different colors of gold used in there. It's mostly one color, and just kind of depends on how the light's hitting it. It's kind of looking a bit more yellow or a bit more orange, kind of depending on the lighting. But it looks like for some of the details, there is a secondary kind of more copper color used in some of these areas, but really nice shade of gold, very orangish gold color used for that. It does look very cool, and obviously compared with the original kit, I mean, it's a big difference, but it's cool to see that it's, I mean, still based off of entry grade. It's really nice. All right, step 9 here is the Strike Noir. And with this one, I think as well, we're just going to be seeing a lot of kit bashing here with the HG Strike Noir kit. And so this is going to be a little bit more in depth, just because there's going to be more parts rather than just kind of adapting parts from the HG kit onto the entry grade. We're going to have to actually like cut apart the entry grade kit a lot more to the aspects of the Strike Noir design kind of fit more in with the base kit. So this is one of those where after all of these modifications and everything, it's going to be probably ultimately about half and half. At the end of the day, it's going to be about half of the original Strike kit kind of left over in the finished build, and then there's going to be half parts from the Strike Noir and a lot of plot plate in between. So you can see there's a lot of cutting things apart, using plot plate to kind of add details or modify details in different ways here, adding some details on like the skirting armor here, for example, onto the modifications to the handguns there. And it's all very cool. Scribing and chiseling sections out there, like in the shoulder, to add in some details there. A lot of plot plate and a lot of modifications here for this one, but that all looks pretty cool. It looks like a lot of fun, definitely. So, I mean, just there's a lot kind of going on for me to go through and like explain about like what's going on in every single stage. I think it's a bit much, but as it's getting more complex, obviously there's a lot more going on in each step here. It's not like a very simple explanation, but I really like how it's shown in like pretty good detail, I have to say, here about like different modifications that are made. So if this is something that you're interested in, I think the explanation, how it's laid out in this book, is pretty clear, is pretty nice. So here you can see, I mean, actually, just looking at that, it doesn't look like there's a ton of the HG used on that. I mean, a lot of it is just modified from with block plate, like to the entry grade Strike. Obviously the backpack, of course, just going to be all from the HG, but modifications to the main kit itself. Kind of interesting here, also using some like carbon fiber film there as well to fill in some of these details underside the skirt there. It's another kind of like the matte black finish sticker that we saw earlier. You can also get ones like that that's in either like Aurora finish or like carbon fiber finish, different finishes and things that you can get just like in sticker form essentially. So really, really cool there. Strike Noir is such a cool, interesting design. And yeah, just to be based off the entry grade, it's really nice. And our last build here, just based on the cover image, I expected the Strike Noir to be our like penultimate final build of the book, but it's actually the Perfect Strike, which does kind of make sense, right? So Perfect Strike here, this one is going to be using probably a combination of a lot of things that we've seen so far, but it looks like here we're just kind of starting straight off the bat with like kind of everything customized. So it's like, okay, in steps 8 and 9, you saw about how to do customization and kit bashing. So you've kind of already seen that all laid out for you. So here's what the kit looks like after it's gone through all that. And it's just kind of some detail images of some of the different aspects of this. So like he's using magnets in here for some of the equipment, for example. Here's how the shoulder looks with the parts from the HG adapted onto the shoulder here of the entry grade. And so it's just kind of like skipping over all of the actual step-by-step modifications, but just showing, okay, here's how it looks modified and unpainted. And then here's all, well, not all, some of the parts that were either like modified and or filled in with putty, etc. This is kind of interesting too. After all that, they showed the actual weight of the kit. This is something too that you do kind of notice when you're doing a kit that has a lot of maybe kit bashing or something like that done to it. Obviously, it's going to make the kit weigh more. So like the original kit, unmodified, weighs 34 grams, looks like 34 grams. And the modified and customized build weighs about double, almost 74, more than double actually, sorry, 74 grams. So that's kind of funny after all said and done. And then that's even before painting too, it looks like. So, I mean, paint is obviously not going to add a lot onto the weight, but it is going to make even that much more slightly heavy once you have layers of surfacer and paint and top coat and your decals, whatever else you're going to be putting onto there. It's going to make that even more so. But really beautiful build there of the Perfect Strike. Again, really nice, just like classic colors here and everything for that. So that looks really good. A nice presentation here at the end. I wish there was a little bit more of like some like larger photos where we have kind of like full page photos of it. I think this is about as large as we're going to get for that particular build. But yeah, anyway, you can see before and after, and it looks really, really nice. Some nice scribing of some detail panel lines added around here and there on it as well. So really nice. Okay, so extra here, we're going to have a little extra section featuring Chika Minase. I feel like I've seen her in a different Mook before. Was she in the Mook for the RX-78-2 entry grade? I'm not sure. I know I've seen her, I think maybe, I feel like, in a different Mook series. Anyway, kind of interesting here. So we're going to see her take on the build using some of these different kind of, a little bit more, this is kind of going back to like step 1 or 2 kind of in there, a very basic kind of using spray cans and Gundam markers and Gundam markers for like your panel lining and the flat black finish for some of the details. So maybe seeing firsthand how some of these techniques can be applied by an actual like non-professional modeler for the finished results to be looking like this. So she did a pretty good job there. Certainly improvement over the just straight out of box build of that. But this is a really important point that I talked about in another Mook review recently, that the thing about books like this, and I'll just bring this up again, is that when you see, especially like the more beginner stages, like step 1, 2, and 3, kind of this section here, and we talk about this in the book, it's presented as these are like the beginner stages because this is like only step 3 or step 1, right? These are like the beginner stages, and so these are like presented as like the most beginner of beginner techniques. And if you're at that stage of modeling and you're seeing like, okay, this is the most beginner, this is where I'm at because I'm brand new to Gundam modeling, I'm just starting out, and so like this is the step for me, and then like you're going through it, and then like your finished result, it doesn't look quite as nice as this. I mean, this is step 1 only, so it's like the most basic of steps in this book, but it's a really, really nice looking finished result. If you're a beginner and you're just doing step 1 kind of stage techniques, and you find that your build is not looking quite that nice, just remember that this is beginner techniques done by a professional. So like, even though it's very simple techniques, it's done by somebody who's had years and years of experience doing modeling, and probably someone who can do all the rest of this other stuff. But for the purposes of this book, they're doing really, really basic steps here. So even though it's really basic steps, it's going to look really good, because then you also have professional photography and professional lighting and everything to make it look as good as possible as well. So I mean, like, there's a lot that goes into making these builds look really good. And if you're a beginner, it's probably not going to look quite that nice, but don't be discouraged by that, because again, this is beginner techniques done by a professional. So last thing in here is about the waterside decals, which are included. There's a decal guide for you to show where these are going to go around. And yeah, we have custom decals for the Strike Rouge, the Strike Noir, and the Akatsuki in here as well, which is really cool. So you have custom markings for those if you decide to make one of those, or if you just have those HG kits, you could throw the decals onto there. And then it's a bit about how to apply waterside decals, which, yeah, pretty nice. So, all right, that's it for this Mook, guys. A really, really nice one. Again, definitely check out my book review of the equivalent of this for the RX-78, because that was another really nice one. But this book series is really nice, I think. Does show a really nice, kind of wide range of techniques from beginner to more advanced, and a lot of really great ideas for a particular kit, which is nice. So a lot of times you'll have books like that, and it'll show like a bunch of different random kits. It's nice to see a lot of different techniques applied to the same kit, because then you can kind of really see the difference between how these different techniques can change the same kit when you see them, each technique applied to the same kit. So I mean, like, how the difference of how the completed build from step 2 looks, how the completed build looks from step 8, for example. So really cool, highly recommended, and hopefully, I don't know if there is another book like this for the new Gundam. Is there? I'll have to check, but can highly recommend this one for you guys. If you can get your hands on it from Hobby Japan, definitely check it out. If you guys want to check out this kit in particular, or any other tools, supplies, paints, any other stuff like that you saw in here, you can check out the link in the video description down there below to USA Gundam Store. We don't carry this book itself, unfortunately, but anything else that you saw within the book, there's a good chance that we have here. So definitely check out the website. Thank you guys so much for all of your support too, liking the video, commenting, subscribing. It all really helps out, and it means a lot to me. So thank you guys so much for all of your support. Till next time, hope you all have a great day. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.